The Third Worst Year by TheFrancakes, read by LMX Mabella. 2. Somewhere between 346 and 331. Fantastic beasts and where to find them. Dragons, class XXXX. These creatures are known wizard killers and are impossible to train or domesticate. Common Welsh green. The common Welsh was green in color and with 2 spiked horns that resided on top of its head. A native dragon of Great Britain. Well, that one would be boring as hell, but boring was better than some of the other options. Hebridean black. It had dark, rough scales, ridges along its back, and a tail tipped with an arrow-shaped spike. The Hebridean black had brilliant purple eyes and could grow to be up to 30 feet long. Sounds intimidating. Definitely in the top 5, maybe even top 3. Rather intrigued by the idea of having purple eyes, actually. Hungarian horntail. Considered to be the most dangerous dragon. It had black scales and was lizard-like in appearance. It also had yellow eyes, bronze horns, and similarly colored spikes that protruded from its long tail. It would be too on the nose to become the same fucking dragon as Potter's Tri-Wizard task, wouldn't it? And then again, the fates are uncreative fools, apparently. I hate this. French Tarrasque. The Tarrasque was said to dwell in Provence. A fearsome creature, it supposedly had the head and jaws of a lion, the body of a turtle, 6 bear-like legs, and a scaly tail ending in a scorpion's sting. How is this even considered a dragon? Rather die. Should have blazed there just in case I'll need to be taken out immediately. Fearsome my ass. Ukrainian Iron Belly. The largest dragon breed ever recorded. Metallic grey in color, with an immense wingspan, long talons and rough scales, said to be as hard as steel. Top choice, but I'm sure I don't get a choice. Better ask Mother if there's any Ukrainian in the bloodline. 320. Ukrainian? No, not as far as I know. French from your father, and there is some Japanese in the black line, but that's more on your cousin's side. Draco's mother explained, levitating the teapot across the patio table. He wasn't sure how there was a cousin's side, seeing as the blacks interbred for decades, but he didn't care enough to ask. Instead, he shook his head to the tea. She still poured him a new cup. Narcissa Malfoy never took no as an answer. Japanese, not Chinese, he clarified, and she shook her head. Damn, there went his chances for a Chinese fireball. Why do you ask? She hummed between silent sips of hibiscus tea. He didn't like the taste, but he wasn't about to complain. No reason. I've got to get going, though. He tried, but she gave him that look, and he knew to stay seated. You can go after you tell me why you broke things off with Astoria, she said with a stern tone, her blue eyes matching the ice in her voice. Ah, so you heard about that? Draco grimaced. I got a howler from her mother. Narcissa grumbled with an eye roll. Draco grimaced even further. If he was still 14, he'd probably have started apologizing for putting his mother through such an event. Also, he probably would have been sent to his room without supper for treating Astoria in that way. Thank God he was a decade older. Not that I'm terribly upset about losing the Greengrasses as in-laws, but I thought you were actually rather taken with the girl, Narcissa said with a nonchalant polish that only those close to her knew to be her perfected fishing strategy. Draco had figured it out at some point in his teen years when she was snooping for information on what he and Theo got up to in the Knot greenhouse after family dinners together. She was acceptable by you and father and a fun shack, but there was no feelings involved, at least on my side of things. Draco explained, trying to mirror his mother's nonchalant tone by giving her details that didn't truly matter. So, what changed? Is it Theo? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Merlin, why does everyone think I'm suddenly in love with Theo? He groaned. slouching in his chair and running his hand through his hair. "Suddenly?" she asked, eyebrow-raising, a smirk on her lips from a memory of exactly what she found in the greenhouse when checking up on them. Theo on his knees, Draco's cock in his mouth, and his mum opening the door asking if they'd like ice cream for dessert. He wanted to die again just thinking about it. "That was a phase," Draco muttered. "A phase that lasted almost 5 years on and off, but you didn't have to know that. Well, the Theo part. The males, not so much." "So there is someone?" Narcissa preened, her smirk turning to a smile. Draco knew she always wanted a love match for him. When she told him about accepting the marriage arrangement with Astoria, she had given him a good 2-hour lecture about finding true love. Merlin, if she only knew what he was dealing with now. But no, he had made the decision not to tell her about the prophecy. He knew she'd be devastated by the news and push him to do everything in his power to court Potter. He didn't blame her. Having a little dragon as a son probably wasn't a very fun time for holidays or winter ski trips to the Alps. "No, Mother, I just realized you were right," he explained. "If I were to find love, I'd like to be able to choose it. Or in this case, not choose it." 314. Probably.
Auror Potter stops possible dark cult. Harry Potter, lead Auror of the Unforgivable Divisions, stopped a possible dark cult this Tuesday evening during their initiation ceremony and arrested 4 wizards, including 2 former Death Eaters. Though Potter would not speak on what the ceremony entailed, whispers around Nocturne Alley suggest that the use of the Imperious Curse on Muggles was one of the main trials. Unfortunately, the arrests did not happen peacefully. Almost an hour's worth of spell battles commenced once the Aurors were on the scene. A source inside the department reported this may have been due to the Aurors apparating to the wrong destination. The source reported their speculation that the incorrect location had been given to Potter on purpose in an attempt on his life, and an internal investigation has been called for. There were thankfully no injuries, but half of the manor the ceremony took place collapsed due to errant spells. Potter heroically saved our Draco Malfoy from the falling rubble, and yet the two were seen yelling at each other afterwards, leading to further suspicion that Potter believes Malfoy was trying to help the Death Eaters escape. As well known, Potter mercifully allowed the former Death Eater onto his team. A correlation between the cult's Death Eaters and Malfoy has been suggested, but no one from within the department will confirm or deny if Malfoy is, once again, suspected of tampering with ministry records.
Draco rolled his eyes as he crumpled the paper. Beyond the paper getting it horribly backward, if he really wanted Potter to save his life, he'd kiss the man. The raid had gone smoothly, minus the normal stupidity that came with every raid. Mostly, someone had said they were to go to a street instead of an avenue and ended up in front of the intended location instead of behind it, alerting everyone to their presence. There had been a few minutes of dueling with the cult inside the manor, but it was over relatively quickly. Maybe 10 minutes tops. Draco was quick with a shield spell, keeping Potter and himself from being hit by a flame curse. Potter then cast an extinguishing spell in the direction of the ricocheting curse, dousing the fire before it even started to burn. If anyone, save the culprits, had been watching, they would have noted how the two auras worked in perfect tandem, expecting the other's spell work before it was even cast. They were both experts in their fields, masters at their spellwork, and the prime example of law enforcement at its best. Draco's eyes glanced at the messy desk across from him, still empty even though it was 10 till the hour. He suspected he wouldn't see Potter for at least another half hour, maybe longer, if he was nursing a hangover after the number of whiskey shots he did at the pub the night prior. Honestly, he'd never bicker with Potter about what pub has a better happy hour again, especially if it would be reported as a screaming match. Surprisingly, Potter burst in at exactly 9, with his hair looking extra bedheady. His glasses were smudged and tilted in a way that made him look much more curious than normal. "Morning," Draco chuckled, rolling his sleeves in nice crisp folds. "We should drink more often if hangovers are what make you on time."
"Sure, you're here," Potter grumbled. "You didn't see the paper yet, did you?"
"Ah, yes. Thank you for saving my life once again," Draco deadpanned. Potter's face crunched with something between anguish and annoyance.
"I already wrote the paper trying to get it all redacted," Potter grumbled, plopping into his chair with no elegance whatsoever.
Draco had a flash of the night before. Potter slumped in the booth across from him, tired but laughing hard at his own joke. Draco was pretty sure he'd laughed along too. "You don't have to do that," Draco murmured. "It won't matter in a year anyways."
"Why? What's happening in a year?"
Potter asked, perking up and sitting a bit taller. Even his hair seemed to perk up. It was such a Potter thing, curious at every clue and ready to learn a whole new world of information. It was cute when it wasn't about Draco's business. Draco realized his fault and closed in on himself. He swallowed and looked down at his hands, pale and scarred from when he covered his face from the chandelier crashing. He fiddled with his signet ring. Nothing that'll make the news," he finally shrugged. If he looked up, he would have seen concern and worry crossing Potter's features. He would have seen the brunette fumble for something to say, opening his mouth once, twice, and a third time with words of support, but failing to find the right ones. If he looked up, maybe he'd known he wasn't so alone in his feelings. But unfortunately, Draco didn't. 311. This month's kitten was a black Bombay with green eyes curled up around a ball of pink yarn.
"Be brave, be bold, be beautiful."
Draco regretted not buying the firefighter calendar. Potter's birthday. Unlike Draco's birthday, Potter's was practically a paid holiday. It was a top story in a newspaper, and there were events around the city to celebrate. Even when Draco entered his office, he found the golden couple had decorated it with streamers in gold and red. "It's crooked," Draco commented, standing in the doorway as he watched Weasley and Granger try to spell parchment to the wall behind Potter's desk.
"Ron, pay attention!"
Granger groaned from where she stood, very pregnant and exhausted looking. "I am," her husband snapped right back. Matrimonial bliss," Draco teased. Though he had not become great friends with the married couple, he had been to the pub a handful of times after work, and the three had become amicable, if not friendly. Granger was a bit easier to warm up to and get along with, but that probably surprised no one. He moved to his side of the office, which they thankfully left undecorated and untouched. He knew Granger's office was just like his when it came to organization, and she probably gave Weasley a good lecture about not messing up any of his things.
"Sorry to be in your way. We just wanted to get this done before Harry got in."
Granger sighed, tucking some of her stray curls back into the bun they refused to stay in. She rested her hand on a baby bump like an armrest. "Not a problem. Would you like to sit?" he asked, nodding to his desk chair. She honestly looked like she could burst any moment.
"It's crooked."
Another voice joined them. Potter stood in the doorway, hair sticking up and glasses crooked.
"Still!"
Granger gasped and tried writing the sign, not noticing it was her friend speaking. Potter and Draco shared a conspiratorial smile as they waited for his friends to realize who spoke. The moment it dawned on them, the banner dropped to the floor and the married couple whipped around with big smiles, gasping at the same time.
"Harry!"
"Happy birthday, mate."
"We wanted to surprise you."
"We would have if you weren't such a perfectionist."
"I wanted it to look nice."
Draco watched as the three best friends traded hugs and continued to chat. They were all full of such happiness, laughing together. Potter thanked them both, feeling Granger's stomach and making jokes about the baby being named after him, if she popped on his birthday. The blonde slowly edged his way out of the room, deciding to find himself some coffee while the intimate exchange continued. He had long grown out of his jealousy of their friendship, but watching them together still made him miss his own friends that he would soon be losing. Even if he were to retain his consciousness, as one did when they transformed into an animagus, what would he do? Mate with a female and protect an egg? The idea of dragon sex wasn't the most appealing kink he'd ever entertained. He was sure he'd rather let Pansy peck him than hump a dragon. Draco wasted as much time in the lounge as he could before he returned to his office. A black coffee in one hand and a very sugared coffee with milk in the other. He slowed his steps as he came closer to the office door, not meaning to eavesdrop, but also not wanting to return if the golden couple was still flitting around. "Sorry you got to spend a day with Malfoy, mate." Weasley's voice drifted out the door. "He's not so bad," Potter said with an awkward grumble. "He was perfectly nice," Granger cut in, loud and parental. She was going to be a great mother. "Still, Pris, he barely said 10 words to us," Weasley countered. "I think he's a bit shy these days," Potter said, attempting to whisper, but failing. "Malfoy shy? Sure. And Voldemort returned today as well." Weasley snorted at his own joke. Draco shifted on his feet and leaned against the hallway wall, looking at the hot black liquid in the mug. He understood where Weasley was coming from, the years of taunting and loud need to be the center of attention. The way he shouted across the pitch, "Weasley's our king," and felt the need to make a snide comment whenever the spotlight wasn't on him. But Potter was right, that was then, and now? Now he just wanted to disappear into the coffee he held. He learned his lesson, knew now that it was better to melt into the wall than take up the hallway. He knew no one wanted to hear what he had to say, that he would never earn respect back from the Wizarding World, that there was no way he'd ever fit in with Potter and his friends. This prophecy was probably a good thing. He was too much of a coward to end things himself. Maybe the fates knew what they were doing after all. Thankfully, the golden couple didn't notice him against the wall as they said their goodbyes to Potter and left towards the lift. "Sorry about that," Potter muttered bashfully when Draco entered the office again. The birthday boy messed with his hair with his hand nervously and tried to tuck one of the gold streamers down, but it stayed glued to the ceiling. "I'm just glad her water didn't break and stain the carpet," Draco teased in response. He set the coffee with milk and sugar on Potter's desk before moving to his own. "I wouldn't have surprised if it did. She's supposed to be on bed rest, honestly." Potter chuckled, giving up on the streamer and plopping into his chair as he always did. He took a sip of his coffee and smiled to himself. Draco knew the exact amount of sugar and milk by heart now. Draco set his coffee down on the desk and bit his lip. Potter's desk was now loaded with presents and gifts from colleagues, from memos sweeping in to dropping off packages. It wasn't surprising, but it still made his gut twist as he looked at the present on his desk sitting next to the snitch that Potter had given him. The contrast in their life was loud and taunting. There was no chance Potter would ever entertain dating Draco, let alone falling in love. They were from 2 different worlds, even with the war being over. Black and white, good and evil, loved and hated. This was his end, and still Potter's beginning. Yet, despite the voice in his head telling him to hide the present and let Potter go on with his life, Draco found himself taking the box wrapped in black and silver paper and sliding it across the desk to Potter. "Potter?" Draco gave a weak smile. "For me?" Potter asked, green eyes glowing with surprise as he took in the box. It was as small as the one that Potter had given Draco on his birthday, except the black gift paper was charmed to twinkle with silver constellations that matched the silver ribbon. "Obviously," Draco chuckled. Potter took the gift and delicately inspected it. "It's probably a little silly, but this is beautiful," he said, as if he'd never seen magic paper in his life. "You're supposed to open it," Draco smirked, trying to hide the smile that he wanted to burst through at Potter's awe of just the wrapping. "Oh, right." A blush crept up Potter's neck and started to flush his cheeks as he busied himself by tearing into the paper. Draco imagined a Christmas of torn paper and bows stuck to chests, laughter and cheer at every rip of paper. Nothing he had ever experienced in his own home. When Potter popped the top of the box, a small crystal dragon levitated out of the box, flapping its wings and breathing a small, annoyed puff of smoke from being trapped for so long. It was roughly the same size as a snitch. The dragon flew upwards and chased the interdepartmental memos, breathing little harmless tufts of fire at the planes. Every time its crystal wings hit the light, a rainbow sparkled on the walls behind it.
"It's not silly at all. I love it,"
Potter said, with his eyes glued to the dragon, a beautiful smile on his lips as he watched like it was his very first time seeing magic. His pure awe made Draco's heart twist in a bittersweet pang.
"It kind of reminds me of you,"
Potter finally said, making it Draco's turn to blush. That wasn't his plan when he bought the gift 4 months ago, when he saw it in Spain and couldn't stop thinking of Potter, but he supposed it was fitting.
"What sort of dragon is it?"
"Not sure yet," Draco murmured, remembering his research.
"I'll have to ask Charlie. He still works at a Romanian dragon sanctuary,"
Potter said, his eyes returning to the dragon that had landed on one of the gold streamers and begun to munch on the paper.
"Weasley?"
Draco asked, his interest suddenly changing.
"Yeah, Ron's older brother," Potter nodded. "He's been training dragons for almost 13 years now, I think. Maybe longer."
"Huh. Interesting," Draco hummed to himself, thinking that maybe he could secure more of his future than he originally thought. To be continued. Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Third Worst Year by TheFrancakes, read by LMX Mabella. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, A3, Instagram or Tumblr.